Good. All right. So, good evening to everyone, or late afternoon, as the seasons continue to change for us. We're going to do a practical class tonight. We're going to be talking about how do you have an Aliyah. So, first thing I have to point out is what I mean by that. So, all of you have been. Oh, someone else coming in? All of you have been to services and have seen that we read from the Torah on Shabbat. And you may have noticed that when we read from the Torah, we have a whole zoo of people up on the bima, up on the platform. We have two people on each side of the table. We have somebody reading from the Torah and somebody who's doing the blessing for the Torah. Tonight, we're going to be talking about that person, the one who's doing the blessing over the Torah, about why they're doing what they're doing, and the physical, how do you actually do it? Because there's a lot of details that are happening in this process. Good afternoon. All right, so let's get rolling. So first we have to start off with a little history, because we're Jewish and there's always a lot of history, but we're only going to do a little history. All right, so 3 are called on Mondays and Thursdays, and in the afternoon on Shabbat. Neither more nor less than that number may be called, nor shall any section from the prophets then be read. The one who opens and the one who closes, they bless before and after. All right, if that sounds a little complicated, welcome to Mishnah. All right, Mishnah is written in a very short style, and sometimes the sentences aren't always very clear. So let me explain what they're saying. The Mishnah is, again, this is about at least 2,000 years old, possibly older. We'll talk about that maybe some other time. So 3 people are called up on Mondays and Thursdays. That means on Monday and Thursday morning, when we have our Shacharit service, we have Torah reading. And the reason why Mondays and Thursdays were chosen is those were the market days. Those were the days throughout history when people would come in from their farms to the city to sell all of their things. And this way, people would always get a dose of Torah. They would always get a little Torah at least every 3 days or so. And you would have it on the days when you had most people. But it's a busy time, which means you can't take as much time as we have on Shabbat, because people need to work. And that meant that we had 3 readings, 3 aliyot, 3 sections from the Torah were read on these Mondays and Thursdays. And also on the afternoon of Shabbat, what we call mincha, for the mincha service. No more, no less. So even if you got 100 people, you don't have 4 aliyot. And even if you have just the bare 10 minimum that you need for a Torah reading, you still do 3, and that's enough. Also on those days, there's no section from the prophets. We're going to come back to that in little more detail, but we call that the haftorah. And on a Monday or Thursday and the mincha, the afternoon of a Shabbat, we don't have that extra piece being read. We're only reading from the Torah portion for the week. How are we doing? Got the basic idea? Good. Here's the part that is a little confusing for modern Jews. The one who opens and the one who closes, they bless before and after. In those days, the first person who came up, they were the reader and the blesser. They did both jobs, and they would do a blessing, and then they would start reading, and then a second person would come up, and they would read without doing a blessing. And then a third person would come up, and they would read, and then they would do a blessing to finish. So the blessings were like a bookend for the whole reading, not just for each person, but for the entire reading as a unit. That has changed over our history. We're going to explain why in a little bit, but first we need to expand it to what people are more used to, which is the holidays and other special days. So on the Feast of the New Moon, what we call Rosh Chodesh, on the middle days of the festival, Chol HaMoed is what we call that in Hebrew, 4 are called. So rather than having only 3 readings, we have 4 readings. This number may neither be added to nor diminished. So you don't go to 5 and you can't go back down to 3. It's got to be 4. Nor shall any section from the prophets be read. Similar to a regular weekday, just a little more. And you may begin to notice a pattern here. The more special a day is, the more sections we read from the Torah. So a regular day, 3 sections. A Rosh Chodesh, which is a slightly more special day, 4 sections. And again, the same pattern. The first of these shall say the blessing before the reading, and the last, who concludes the reading, shall say the last blessing after the reading. This is the rule. On all days which an additional offering is prescribed, what we would call the Musaf offering, and which are not festivals, 4 are called. That is to say Rosh Chodesh or the Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days. 5, however, are called on festivals. So for Sukkot, or for Pesach, for Shavuot, for the festival days, we have 5 readings. Got to get the right number of fingers. And then on the Day of Atonement, that's Yom Kippur, we have 6 readings. And then on Shabbat, we have 7 readings. So, which day is the most special? Shabbat. And that comes throughout the Torah in every way. Shabbat is always considered to be the most special day. Every day has its own special thing, especially the other festivals. But if we're doing a list of specialness, Shabbat is always number 1. This number may not be diminished, but it may be increased. So let's imagine, for example, that I was still working up in Baltimore, where we had a very big congregation with lots of bar mitzvahs. We had 2 kids every week, almost every week. How do you have enough aliyot, enough blessings, so that both families can have enough honors for the parents, for the kid, for the grandparent? What do? You add an extra aliyah. So then each one would have enough honors that they would be able to share in the celebration. So you can read additional sections, or you can divide the bigger sections into smaller sections. As long as you have 7 minimum, you can always add more. Make sense? Okay. And a section from the prophets must be read on those days. That's what we call the haftorah. Again, we'll come back to that in a second. So the number is the same. We still do exactly the same number. So every Shabbat we have 7 aliyot, 7 sections in the Torah are being read. And every Yom Kippur, 6 sections, and every regular holiday, 5 sections, and so on. That has not changed at all. But those blessings, before and after, that has changed. Right, so who reads and who blesses nowadays? Well, in the old days, as I mentioned, it was the person who came up, read, and did the blessing. And back then, just like now, not everybody was really good at it. I know we tend to imagine that all of our ancestors were beautiful sages who knew the entire Torah and could chant beautifully and no problem. Not everybody was like that, right? Not because anything wrong with them, but not everybody had those skills. And that meant that if someone got up there who didn't have much training, who didn't have much learning, if they tried to read from the Torah, it would sound pretty horrible, and they'd make many mistakes, and there would have to be lots of corrections. And that's not good for the Torah, right? That's not honoring the Torah to make a mess of it. It's like, imagine you have a very important guest coming to your house. Are you going to let your 5-year-old cook the dinner? Yeah, unless your 5-year-old is really talented, most of the time you're going to want somebody who has more experience to do the cooking. But that also becomes a problem for the reader side, for the other people. Because now if you only have a few people who can do the reading and do the blessing, then they're the ones who are always getting all the honors, and everyone else is kind of being dishonored because they're no longer able to participate in this because they lack that training. And so what happened was they split the 2 jobs. And they said there's going to be somebody who is designated to read. This person has prepared that section. They have reviewed it. They have practiced the trope, the Tamei Mikra, the cantillation markings, the music for how to do it. It's not really about music. It's punctuation, but another class. And then we'll have someone else who will do the blessing, who will do the blessing for the Torah. And that person will be independent from the reading cycle. And so we will give them the blessing before and after their section. And that's how we ended up with the system that we have now, which we've been doing now for a long, long time, 1,000+ years. It's been a long time that we've been having it this way. We needed to make this adjustment a long time ago. How we doing? Make sense? Okay. So you then have to work out who gets the honor, because coming up to say the blessing over the Torah is the biggest honor you can have during a service. And sometimes when there are honors, there can be arguments over who gets the honor. I know we like to think that everybody is nice and everybody thinks it's fine. And it doesn't mean that people were selfish about the honors, but it could be, for example, I could say, well, Sigfrido, he is the nicest guy in the community, right? Or I could say, Yoel, he is the wisest rabbi we have in this community, so he should have the first honor. And then you would say, no, he's not the wisest. That guy's the wise. And it doesn't mean that we're being selfish for ourselves, but we could just be very enthusiastic supporters of other people, and that can cause friction. So we came up with a system. We said the Kohanim, they get first, right? They get the first Aliyah. And the Levites, they get number 2. So number 1 and number 2, they go to the Kohanim and the Levites. Now, a Kohen and a Levi can choose to set aside their honor if there's a special reason why it needs to be done differently. But this is the default that we use, is a Kohen and a Levi go 1 and go 2. And then Yisrael, that's the rest of us, right? So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the rest of us, we get those honors because there's always more of us than there are of them. Make sense so far? All right. However, especially for the rest of us, there are still other reasons why we might want the honor of the Aliyah. For example, we could have a yahrzeit. Remember, the yahrzeit is the anniversary of somebody who died that was close to me. So if this were the anniversary of my father's passing, doing an Aliyah in his honor would be very important to me. And so I would go and say, hey, I would like an Aliyah. But there might also be an ufruf. An ufruf is the wedding, the day before the wedding, or the week before the wedding, depending upon when it's happening. And so if I'm about to get married, I want to have an Aliyah because there's a very special blessing that can be done when you're called to the Torah before your wedding. Also, I might have a new baby. And there's a special blessing that can be done for a new baby. That also includes the name. Or it could be a birthday, or it could be I'm going on a trip to Israel, or maybe I'm even making Aliyah to go live in Israel permanently, or maybe I'm about to go on a dangerous trip, or maybe I'm having an anniversary, or there are lots of different reasons why I might want to have an Aliyah. And in fact, there is a whole system based on different debates that puts together a whole list of who gets first choice. But we're not going to go into that. It's interesting, and if you want, you can look it up. But the basic idea is that this is such a desired honor to have an Aliyah that sometimes we had to actually limit because we've only got so many honors. I know I said we can keep adding extra honors, but you also can't make it so the service lasts 12 days. You can't keep going forever. So in big congregations, sometimes this can happen as a problem. In our congregation, it's not usually a big issue, but good? Good. Okay. Muffed here. You might have heard the word muffed here. You might have noticed when you look at the handout that we have on Shabbat that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, M. M? M is for muffed here. So what is a muffed here? Well, on Shabbat and festivals, as we saw in the earlier Mishnah, we read from the prophets. And that reading is called a haftorah. In order to make sure we give Torah equal respect, the reader of the haftorah has to also have an aliyah with the Torah. I think of it like this. If somebody is going to get up and read from the prophets, but they're not giving any respect to the Torah, that really feels wrong. So in order to make sure they are also showing proper respect to the Torah, they also have an aliyah. I'm trying to think of an example. It'd be like, imagine you go to visit, two good friends, and you only say hi to one of them in the room. Hello, what am I, chopped liver? Right? You need to respect both. And so the maftir is there to make sure that the reader for the haftorah is also given a chance to show respect and honor to the Torah. And that aliyah that gets added is called the maftir. And that's reserved for whoever is chanting the haftorah. So you'll notice in the handout that it will say whoever is doing the haftorah, their name will already be added to the line that says this is the person doing maftir. Now, on some special Shabbats and festivals, this is actually read from a different place in the Torah. So, for example, when we have a holiday, we will read a Torah section that's about the holiday, and then we will read an additional section that is about the sacrifices on the holiday. And that's already been rolled in a separate Torah so that we don't have to sit there and roll in the middle and waste the congregation's time, because that's considered very rude. And actually the Talmud says we're not allowed to do that. We have to prepare in advance, because we should not be wasting the congregation's time and making them sit there going, when are they going to get to the correct chapter? Because it can take a while to roll between certain places. On regular Shabbats, the maftir, on the other hand, is usually just a duplicate, a repetition of the final lines of the last aliyah. Make sense? Okay, so let me explain a little bit more about the haftorah itself. So the haftorah is the section from the prophets. And long ago, it was customary, or it became customary, this is 2,000 years plus, to read from the prophets something that matched the theme of the day. So if I was reading about Noah, I would read from one of the prophets, something that had to do with Noah. If I was reading about Abraham, I'd read from something in the prophets that had to do with Abraham. If I'm reading in a holiday, like for example, Yom Kippur, I'm going to read a section from Isaiah that talks about what it really means to return to God. This was a great way really, to help reinforce the message of the Torah portion or the holiday. Makes sense, right? Well, there was a time that when this began was really because there was a foreign power, there's an argument over which, that outlawed reading Torah. And since as Jews we're very good at finding loopholes, we said, well, if we can't publicly read the Torah, we can publicly read from the prophets, because they didn't outlaw that. And so this was a way of publicly still giving the same message, and privately, of course, still studying Torah, and not being executed by the government. And then after they were gone, after that government disappeared, we kept this practice of reading from the prophets up until this point. For a long time, however, picking the piece, that was up to the reader. You didn't know what the guy was going to read. He would go, all right, it's time for a haftorah. I want to read from Isaiah. I want to read from Jeremiah. I want to read from Yechezkel. He would just decide which was the right piece. That meant he had to know a lot of them, but it was the choice. Over time, however, we settled on specific chunks that were considered to be the best pieces that matched that particular day or holiday. But there are still some differences between the Sephardic and the Ashkenazic patterns for what is read from the prophets. Not big differences usually, but there are a few. We doing okay?
Yep.
All right, rolling along. So I'm going to break it down. It's a 12-step process. What happens when you actually have an aliyah? One little footnote. This is one of those things about language. Have an aliyah and make aliyah. Two very different things in the English world, right? Have an aliyah means you are called up to the bima for the Torah reading. Make aliyah means you are immigrating to Israel to live there forever. Now, they both are called aliyah because the word aliyah means going up, right? So in the sanctuary, you are going up to the bima, to the raised platform. To Israel, you are going up because Israel is the highest place in the world.
How do you call it? Bina?
Bima. Bima. Yeah. B-I-M-A-H, I guess. Bima. Yeah.
Bina.
Right. So bima is like the correct Hebrew pronunciation, but a lot of people will just say bima. That's sort of the American pronunciation. And it's just in every congregation, there will always be a platform that's higher for where the Torah is being read. And you go up to the platform, you have an Aliyah. Okay, and you will find that there is a standard pattern, basically of 12 steps that happen. And we're going to go through each one of these. Some of them have more detail than others, but you got to know them all. So the first one, the approach, right? So you are sitting in your chair and you know that it is time for your Aliyah because somebody has told you, would you have the third Aliyah? Would you have the fifth Aliyah? They would have already given you that honor. In our congregation, we have little cards that say which one you have, but sometimes they just whisper and say, number 5, and that's good. So when it comes time, you come up to the bima the shortest way possible, right? So wherever you're sitting, you just, that's where I'm walking. You don't walk over the top of people, but you don't take the long route. Well, yeah, don't step across the benches. Yeah, you don't take the long route. And the idea here is, of course, that you are trying to get to the Torah as quickly as possible, and also that you're not making the congregation wait while you strut around the sanctuary. Right? It's about respect for the Torah and respect for the community. Now, every synagogue is a little different in terms of how the bima is laid out and the Torah table and all of that. But for our congregation, one comes up to the gabbai on the left side of the table, the shulchan, in order to make sure you can give the Hebrew name, because we need that for the calling. The gabbai is going to call you up officially by your Hebrew name. So he will say ta'amod or ya'amod, which means both for a man and, ta'amod for a girl, ya'amod for a man. Oh, hello. We got little eyes at the door. It's okay. Little eyes need help. That's part of our job. So when you come up, they're going to say Ya'amod, which means arise, so and so, son or daughter of so and so. The Hebrew name, as we've talked, I think before, always has 2 parts. It has your part, and then it has your parents' part. For people who convert, the parents' part, you get the best parents ever. You get the parents Abraham and Sarah, right? Avraham Sarah. So the rest of us, we have to make do with our actual parents, which, you know, not quite as good as Abraham and Sarah. Well, maybe. Don't tell my mother I said that. So they call you up, and they also will say, you know, that this is for the third Aliyah, the fourth Aliyah, or for the Muffed. They'll make sure that everyone knows which one it is. Make sense? Okay. Then you will take your tallit, and it is a custom, not a custom, it is a custom to take the tzitzit, the fringes on the corner, and to touch the corner of those tzitzit when the place where the reading will start. Whoever is reading will usually be pointing at that section. So you'll know exactly where it is. You'll touch, you'll kiss, and then that is another way of showing our love of Torah and respect, exactly. Doing so far so good? Good. And then comes the grasp, the holding, right? So the Torah will be unrolled in front of you, and there are 2 wooden handles. You let go of your tzitzit, and you grab both handles, right? And this is a way of showing that this is my Torah, right? This was given to me. It's ownership. It's belonging by holding on to it like this. And we do this while we do the blessing. Now, a little debate. In some communities, there is a custom where they will roll the Torah closed while they say the blessing. However, many great rabbis, including the Vilna Gaon, say that no, you don't roll it closed, you leave it open for 2 very important reasons. One, when you roll it closed, the reader can lose his place, and now it's going to be harder to start again. But the even bigger reason is it's because of the Torah, the words of the Torah, that I'm saying a blessing. So if I hide the words, what am I saying the blessing about? So it is the custom in our congregation to leave the Torah open while saying the blessing. The reason why that began was because you didn't want to look like you were reading the blessing from the Torah, because we don't want people to think that the blessing is written in the Torah. Because if you look in the Torah, you're not going to find Baruch Atah Adonai. It's never found in the Torah. So instead, what we do is while holding the handles, we look this way, and there's a big card with all the words of the blessing over here. And that way people can see you're reading from here, you're not reading from there. And then there's no mistake. Make sense? Okay. And then you do the blessing. So translation first. The blessing has a call and a response, what we call the baruch. The baruch is an invitation. It's an order, really, to give blessing to God. So it is the equivalent of me saying to Harriet, hey, bless God. The fancy grammar word is the imperative form. Right? This is a do it, right? Bless God.
You must.
You must, right? It's an order. I'm giving her a command. Except in this part, I'm giving a command to the whole congregation. I'm saying to the whole congregation, bless God, right? Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due. Come on, everyone, do it. And that's why the congregation then responds, indeed, blessed is, or praised is Adonai, to whom praise is due, now and forever. Now, I have now become the only person in the room who hasn't blessed God, right? Because I ordered everyone else, but I still haven't done it. And so I repeat the same line the congregation just said for myself. And then I continue. And then I continue with the blessing that focuses on the Torah itself. Now, this pattern is an incredibly powerful moment. It is, first of all, an opportunity where we are saying that study from the Torah, this is the way we give praise to God. Right? It's that by taking the Torah into our life, by learning from it and living it, this is what is giving praise to God. Right? The Torah is the reason why we should be most aware that we need to give praise to God. Because without the Torah, even if we had clouds and birds and food and all the other blessings that God has given us, we would be just bouncing around the world almost at random. It's the Torah that lets us have meaning and purpose and direction and make our life so much better and to make our spirits grow so much. So this declaration is very, very powerful. Because it's an order, this is also one of the reasons why we don't let kids do it. Right? You're not going to see a 10-year-old doing this. They'll learn it in our school, they'll practice it, but on the bima, during the service for real, you have to be bar and bat mitzvah age or older. Because what, a 10-year-old's going to give me an order? Right? No, you have to be the same rank to give me an order. You can't, private doesn't give an order to a sergeant. We've got to be in the same rank. So, how does this actually sound? Well, over there is the Hebrew. So I'm going to do a quick version of it so that you will have a recording if you want to re-listen to the video. It goes like this. Baruch et Adonai hamevorach. And then the congregation responds, Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Nicely done. And then the reader, or the Aliyah, the person doing the blessing, continues by repeating that same line, Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. And then continues with that part. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. You guys have all been practicing. Now, you don't say amen to your own blessing, but you say amen to everyone else's blessing. Now, that last paragraph is the one that has the meat about the Torah itself. Remember, the first one is a more general expression of praise for God. So what are we actually saying here? Well, we are saying that God is the one who has chosen us from among all nations and gave us his Torah. This is the essence. When people talk about, we are the chosen people, what we are saying is we were chosen to have the Torah. That's a very special honor that we have. Does that mean we're better than every other nation? No. Every other nation has their own different honor and different role to play in God's world. Our honor, our selection, our chosenness is tied up with the concept of Torah. And so when we are reading from the Torah, when we are learning from the Torah, when we are sharing Torah, that is when we are doing what is our purpose. And that's why the blessing is written this way. And then we finish the final part. We praise you, Adonai, giver of the Torah, noten haTorah, because that is one of God's titles, is the one who gave us Torah. For bonus points, does anyone know what the Hebrew word Torah actually means?
Yes.
Yes?
Guidance.
Guidance or instruction, exactly, teaching, because that's what God was trying to do. The Hebrew word morah, for example, which means teacher, comes from the same root word as Torah, because that is the greatest gift God gave us, is teaching, is instruction. Okay, so we've said the blessing while holding on to the handles. Now, during the reading, we have to let go of the left handle, because otherwise the reader can't get there. And then we sort of turn just a little bit, and the reader moves into that center gap, and they read, but you keep hold of the right hand handle, of the wooden handle of the Torah on this side. Everyone got the mental picture there?
Sure.
Right? So I do the blessing, and then I just turn a little bit to make room for the reader, and then hold on during the reader. Got it? Got it.
I'm giving you the chance to read it because this is my Torah.
But it is still my Aliyah. And that's why we still try to read along. So as the reading is happening, right, as the reading is happening, you should be watching in the Torah as the reader goes using the yad. Now, the yad, the pointer, can help keep up, or if you know Hebrew well enough, of course, you can read in your mind or move your lips with what the reader is saying. But when you have an Aliyah, it shouldn't be, I said the blessing, and now just, it's, you're supposed to be focused on the Torah that's actually happening in front of you. So you need to keep your concentration, your kavanah, your intention during that moment, or few moments, or long moment if it's a very long section that's being read. Good?
Rabbi, we never touched the Torah, right?
Except for very rare circumstances, correct. We always use the yad, the pointer, in order to make sure that we read the right words, but we're not potentially damaging or coming into contact with the Torah. Yes. Okay. And then eventually the reader will finish. When the reader finishes, you'll see that they will be standing there with the yad, pointing to the last word that they've read. Again, we take the tallit, we tap and kiss for where they finished. So that way we kissed at the top, we kissed at the end. Yes. What?
You have one hand on the roll.
So it depends if you're right-handed or left-handed.
I want to know.
Yeah. So if you're left-handed when you're doing, or if you're right-handed when you're doing this, usually you hold on with your left hand, you tap, you kiss, you let go, and then you hold on again with both hands for the final blessing. If you're left-handed, you do it reversed. Hold on with the right hand, tap, kiss, and then hold for both during the final blessing. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the blessing after is a little shorter because the blessing after doesn't have the barhu to begin it. So the translation is very similar to begin with. We praise you, Adonai, ruler of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth, Torat Emet. That not only that the Torah is true, of course the Torah is true, but that the Torah is truth itself, right, is embedded. The truth of the universe is there in these words. And this is an amazing gift that God has shared and planted within us eternal life. Just like a seed, God has put into us a seed that can grow to be eternal life, right? Chaye olam, life that goes on forever. The Torah is how we water that seed, is how we grow that seed so that our tree will be more beautiful and produce more fruit and have a better life. But God planted it. It's our job to take care of it. Make sense? And we do that with the Torah. And then, of course, we finish with the same ending. We praise you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. And it uses the same melody as the blessing before for the end. And you'll notice, I'm sure, the melody is designed to be very easy so that everyone can do it. It just goes up and over and down, and then just repeats. It's like 3 notes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And by the way, you are highly recommended while you are still learning these blessings to sing along quietly while the person on the bima is doing the blessing. It gives you a chance to practice it 8 times every single Shabbat, and you practice it 8 times each week. You'll get really good at it really quick. Okay. Any questions about the blessing? Okay. And then we linger. What I mean by linger is after your Aliyah is done, you don't just say, I'm gone. After the Aliyah is done, you move to one side and make room for the next person, but you stay on the bima. You don't run back to your seat right away. And we do this again to show respect and to show love. If you've ever visited with a friend, when you finish dinner, do you just get up from the table and say bye and go to your car? No, you stay, you chat, you have a little coffee, and even when it's time to go, you walk to the door and you hug again, and then they walk you to the car and you talk again, and half an hour later, you're finally going. Well, maybe not half an hour, but the same idea, that we're so reluctant to leave the Torah that we linger a little bit longer. We just stay a little bit longer. We keep up there for one additional Aliyah. So my turn is over, but I don't run away. Everyone have that picture? Mm-hmm. Good. And then you depart. And when you depart, you take the longest way back to your chair. So remember, when you come up, it's shortest route, and going back, it's longest route. And as you go back, people will be saying to you, Yasher Koach, they'll be shaking your hand. Yasher Koach can literally be translated as sort of like, may your strength continue, or be reinforced, or it's kind of an idiom, so it's not a good literal translation. And then the response to that is Baruch Tihiyeh, if you're talking to a man, or Baruch Tihi, which is to a woman. And both of those mean, may you be blessed. Right? It's like, yes, thank you very much for acknowledging the honor I've had. I hope you also have blessing. Okay, any questions? All right, because I believe we finished our slide, which means we do have time, good, to go into the sanctuary so we can actually see how this works in practice. But any other questions before we move in there? Yeah, we get a field trip. Okay, because I got to stop the recording for this because there's no way to do the camera in there.